I think that the most surprising, interesting thing probably within the last year in ministry
Mhm.
is realizing how much pent up desire there is on people's part to be equipped to explain and defend their faith. And I would say how much I'm hearing from ordinary credo Catholics who
Mhm.
I think increasingly over the last, several decades, but increasingly in the future have perhaps they've been catechized in the fundamentals of the faith, but
Mhm.
they're not catechized in how to explain it, and they're not trained in how to explain it, and they find themselves with family and friends and coworkers, and increasingly in the culture, not knowing how exactly to articulate
Mhm.
and defend their faith in when
Mhm.
it's being challenged.
Mhm. Amazing. Well, let's get into that. Friends, welcome. Today we have with us Greg Smith. Welcome, Greg. Good to have you with us.
Good to be here, Dominic.
Greg is a former evangelical evangelist, and if you couldn't tell, it's already right there. He left the megachurches to become an evangelist for the original megachurch. He's got he got 2 podcasts, I think, and there's a YouTube channel. Uh, we're going to get into all of that. First, Greg, before doing that, I want to ask you about your story.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm forgetting my own process. Welcome, friends. This is Smart Catholics Mastermind. We're all about meeting the minds and hearts of Catholic creators like Greg. They devote their time and talent to mastering their journey and vocation so that normal people like you and I can live fuller lives faster, maybe get a little smarter. Over to you, Greg. What is your story? What is this conversion story here?
Yeah, well, it really was a couple of conversions or a sequence of conversions. So I think of it a little bit like a journey where, I hit milestones along the way, or maybe you're running the hurdles race. I grew up as a secular person. I grew up in Southern California, raised outside the church. And when I was in college, I came to Christ initially through the
Mhm.
ministry of campus ministries like Campus Crusade and InterVarsity. So I accepted Christ in a dorm Bible study and was immediately asked to lead a dorm Bible study to international students at the university that I was at. And so, right out of the gate, my orientation was being able to try to share the gospel and teach scripture to a kind of broad audience. When I graduated from college, I was going to go to film school actually. But I was persuaded to go to seminary and get at least a theological education. And then I thought, well, maybe someday when I grow up, I'll be like a Christian filmmaker. So I went and got a Master of Divinity degree at a Calvinist seminary. And that led to me being ordained and doing missions in a Reformed denomination for 10 years. At the
Mhm.
end of that, I ended up sort of leaving that Reformed denomination to go more broadly into the evangelical world. And I worked in consulting in the megachurch world. So I worked on media consulting, I worked in Christian publishing, and I worked on strategic planning with megachurch pastors.
Wow.
But during this whole thing along the way, I was on unbeknownst to me, a slow road to Rome.
Okay.
And so I had had some early exposure to Catholic concepts and Catholic moral theology, Catholic history. And as I went along, I felt more and more of how should I say, a dissonance, a gap opening between myself and the mega churches that I was working with.
Mhm.
And I had a similar experience in the late 90s when I was in the United Kingdom, and I'd gone over to Ireland, and I had the opportunity to visit a place that's kind of hard to visit. And that's a monastery off the West Irish coast called Skellig Michael, these little beehive
Mhm.
huts. People have known it now because it ended up in one of the later Star Wars
Star
movies.
Wars, yeah.
Yeah, but I ended up going there back in the late 90s. It was very difficult to get there.
Wow.
You can only get there like one day a week because of the storms and a boat and all that. I remember sitting in one of those beehive huts looking out, and in the 8th or 9th century, that was really the church on the edge of the world. It was like the westernmost point of Christianity. And I
Wow.
sat there and had this kind of spiritual moment where I felt like God was calling me to discover the church of history. And so all the years that I was spending working in Christian publishing and consulting with some of the largest mega church pastors in the world, I was secretly sort of studying the Catholic Church and the Catechism of the
Wow.
Catholic Church and Catholic history. And finally, at a certain point, I realized where I needed to be, and that I was on the road to Rome, and I needed to make a choice, and I needed to decide to either cross the Tiber or not. I left that world behind and entered the Roman Catholic Church, and then one thing led to another. My pastor asked me to help with some adult ed programming in their church and do some of the things that I used to do before. And
Mhm.
before I knew it, we had launched the Lakeshore Academy for the new Evangelization, which is an adult ed program that we run. And then we had launched a media ministry and the Considering Catholicism podcast. And so here I am.
That's amazing. So please keep right on going. What are these projects? What are these podcasts?
Yeah, sure. So the Lakeshore Academy for the New Evangelization, I'll talk about that first. That's something that we launched. It's our original idea was that a lot of what I saw when I was working in the megachurch world for a while, I worked for the largest Christian publisher, or at least Protestant Christian publisher in the world, Zondervan Christian Publishing, and I was the senior director of ministry resources. So basically, we created curriculum programs for all of the megachurches around the world. And what the evangelical world did really well was education. It really, I mean, it excels at organized, structured adult education and formation. And what I realized that was in a lot of Catholic parishes, adult faith formation is occasional and sporadic and not very well organized. And I felt a little bit distressed because I could see that the Catholic Church had so much to teach, but its structure and systems of catechesis were really lagging behind what was going on in the Protestant world. So I said, well, why don't we start the Lakeshore Academy for the New Evangelization and begin to bring structured adult faith formation. And the idea was to create something almost like a community college model for adult Catholics that want to learn and grow in their faith. We did that. And we started with classroom programs. And then when COVID hit, we realized that we needed to go online. So we began to launch a lot of online courses and online programming and virtual teaching. And did that for a year or two. And then near the end of the COVID period, we realized that with the Lakeshore Academy, a lot of it was behind a paywall because it's like $10 a month for the tuition, but still, we began to realize that what we needed was a way to reach out more broadly to Catholics and people who are curious about Catholicism. And so we started a second nonprofit called One Whirling Adventure, based on a G.K. Chesterton quote. And then we launched out of that, the first ministry project is a Considering Catholicism podcast. Wow. And so I'm busy teaching Lane, leading pilgrimage tours, creating content on the Lane side, and then the Considering Catholicism podcast as well.
Oh my goodness. So you lead tours as well. Where do you travel to?
Well, we go all over. We were doing a lot of Europe stuff and Holy Land stuff before COVID. In fact, I led a pilgrimage to Rome or Italy. We were in Rome and Orvieto and Assisi and Siena and Florence about a month before COVID hit Italy. We got back Thanksgiving weekend, and a month later, Italy shut down. And then it's been hard to get over there. So in the meantime, we've been doing domestic pilgrimages. So we've taken people to some cathedrals and Catholic shrines around the United States. We've got some of those planned this year. And we're looking at resuming all of our Holy Land and European pilgrimages this next spring, now that it seems that, the COVID thing has abated enough for us to travel.
That's amazing. That's amazing. The name by the lake side, what was the inspiration for that?
Well, we literally are by the lake. So
I was thinking Sea of Galilee, Jesus teaching from the boat, maybe.
It was only that, it was only that profound. So we live in a town on the shores of Lake Michigan, the Great Lakes, and we live in a city on the Michigan side, so it'd be on the eastern shore or western Michigan. And the parish that we attend and the parish that I work at that launched the academy is Our Lady of the Lake. And so when we were looking around for a name, we wanted to be a part of the new evangelization and the process of the new evangelization that the recent popes have called for. And we looked around for a name and we said, well, hey, look, it's the Lakeshore Academy.
How does the academy work? You mentioned it's online available courses and stuff like that. So how does it work, and who is best equipped to use it or gets the most out of it?
Absolutely. So we offer courses both online and in person, and we stream the in-person courses. So we started out with only adults, and you simply buy what we call a Lane digital passport. So it's like $10 a month if you buy like a year or something like that. That gives you access not only to all of our courses, but our archive of courses for 5-6 years now. So we've got dozens and dozens and dozens of courses. And if you're in person and you can attend one of the in-person classes here in Western Michigan, that's great. We teach them at several locations in Western Michigan. If not, you can stream or you can access all the archive material. And we produce some special programs just for online. So this last year, I did a 10-part documentary series on the history of American Catholicism called American Pilgrimages, where we kind of talked about the Catholic Church from the day the first missionaries hit this continent to the present. The year before that, I did a 20-episode documentary on the people people, places, and things of Catholic history called One Whirling Adventure. So we have a lot of online only documentary type courses, and also some audios. I did a 48 episode commentary on the Bible called The Story the Scriptures Tell. So we
Wow.
have all that kind of content. We've got some
Okay.
exciting programs coming up this year. We're going to be teaching on the Eucharist. We're going to be teaching on the saints, sort of things. But this year, in the last year or two, we spun off and we launched something called Lane Kids, which is approved by our diocese and several of the other dioceses here in Michigan, in the Archdiocese, to be a program, an online or homeschool curriculum for children's faith formation. And then we just launched Lane Families, which is something that families can literally use so that the parents and the kids are all growing in their Catholic faith together. Because, we believe that Catholic education isn't something that's just confined to the Catholic day school. Catholic education is a lifelong endeavor. Faith seeks understanding.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic.
So if
Absolutely.
you go to lanecatholic.org, you'll find all of that information, all the courses, and you can sign up there. And then, like I said, we launched this other ministry, of which the Considering Catholicism podcast is the first that is intended to sort of be out there in the general public. So we're reaching hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people a week through the Considering Catholicism podcast. We just started a few months ago, and it's growing rapidly. People around the United States and overseas, we're seeing a lot of downloads from Europe and Australia, English-speaking countries.
Brilliant. Oh, that's brilliant. What's the how do I say it? It's kind of a marketing question, I guess, but given all of the different kinds of Catholic, content and academies and so on that are out there, is there a particular charism that your academy brings or your podcast brings? Is there a focus or an insight that kind of forms the foundation that maybe you feel sets it apart from others?
Yeah, I think we share a lot in common with others. We want to be faithfully Catholic. We want to be, for lack of a better word, orthodox in our Catholicism. We want to respect the historic church, but it's not like a rad trad kind of thing. We want to be down the middle of the catechism of the Catholic Church and teach faithfully. I think from a charism standpoint, I think I'd probably have to speak to my own journey as the dean of the academy and the host of the programs, in that having journeyed through from evangelicalism, Calvinism, the broad megachurch world to this, I think we're really trying to create dialogue that not only, I think, does two things: it dialogues with the world outside Catholicism, with non-Catholics, but it also, I think, equips Catholics to dialogue with non-Catholics. And I think one of the things that has been interesting to me as I've presented over the last number of years is how many credo Catholics have never been able to, in a sense, step out of their experience to sort of see the Catholic Church from the outside. And one of the things that's probably been one of the most rewarding things is to have credo Catholics come and say that all of these things that were so familiar to me because I lived inside of them for so years, I'm seeing them now through the eyes of people who are seeing them fresh or seeing them from the outside. And it's making me appreciate my church and my faith even more. So I would say that, there's a lot of great teachers out there. There's a lot of great things. But, when I worked in Christian publishing, we realized that, different audiences, different people are going to find a voice that resonates with them. And there's a lot of great voices in the Catholic world right now. And we hope that this voice resonates with some folks.
I love that. I think that is an unaddressed and a much needed angle into, the whole thing. Like you say, being able to see it from the outside, see it from other points of view, to create those bridges, those discussions. It's very hard for us to see outside of our own tribe. Where can people find you online, Greg?
So if you go to lanecatholic.org, LANE Catholic.org, you can learn about the Lakeshore Academy, which is, like I said, is more of an educational-based, subscription-based model. Or you can go to consideringcatholicism.com, and there you'll find my podcast, Considering Catholicism. We do 2 to 3 episodes a week. We interview a lot of people. We have a lot of features that I think people find very interesting. And you can also find that wherever podcasts are, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever you want to go, consideringcatholicism.com.
Fantastic. Well, friends, if you enjoyed this interview, please do hit that like button. It does help more people to discover Greg and hear his message. The YouTube algorithm will push this video out. This show is brought to you by the Free Catholic Community for Catholic millennials, creators, and learners who want faithful conversations that are unafraid of doubts and questions. Together, let's get smarter. Come and check us out on SmartCatholics.com. Greg, I love to wrap with my favorite question to everybody. If you had 1 minute to share a message or a word of encouragement to Catholics everywhere, what would you want to say?
I would want them to be excited about their faith. I think that there's a lot in the Catholic world right now. I mean, these are challenging times. Of course, all times are challenging times, but these are challenging times that we live in. And I think that I see a lot of Catholics that are either sort of grimly determined to stick with it,
Right.
Catholics who maybe believe it but are bored. I see Catholics who have become apathetic or are disenchanted. But I want them to see that the gospel and the establishment of the living church is an exciting thing. I mean, it's the center of history. It's the most exciting thing that's ever happened. And I want them to understand that the Catholic Church, which spans 20 centuries, 24 time zones, 2 hemispheres, every race, tribe, language, and nation, it's the longest lasting, biggest organization in human history. And it's exciting. And we get to be a part of it. And I want them to capture excitement for the gospel, for the presence of Christ, and this amazing thing that we're part of. G.K. Chesterton talked about the democracy of the dead and how we're able to participate with all the generations that have come before to testify to the world. And so I want them to be excited about their faith.